You know, what happens when someone posts their darkest moment? Not to a close friend, but to thousands of strangers on the internet. Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful case study from Reddit, specifically the Our Advice forum. We're going to look at how this huge, anonymous online community basically built a digital support system from the ground up, all because of one desperate cry for help. So, this whole thing started with a post from a 16-year-old girl. And this one sentence, it just cuts right to the heart of the trauma she went through. It's a really raw, really difficult place to start, I know, but it's so important for understanding the kind of immediate, just overwhelming response that came next.
All right, so let's get into it. First things first, before we can really unpack the community's reaction, we have to understand the post that kicked this whole thing off.
So, the original poster, the OP, as they say, she laid out a really clear timeline of what happened that night. It starts out, pretty normal, but then things escalate really fast when she withdraws her consent. He just ignored her, and that led to the assault. Right after, she did something incredibly brave. She called her best friend, and that friend took her straight to the hospital. That's where she reported the crime and had an exam done.
And this is where you see just two completely different worlds colliding. You've got the boyfriend's reaction, which is honestly chilling. He laughed while she was crying. He asked if she was hungry, just so detached. And then you have her best friend, who was there in a heartbeat, providing that immediate, unwavering support. And this huge contrast, this difference between betrayal and real, true support, that's exactly what the online community latched onto.
So the big question is, how did the internet react? Well, almost instantly, this first wave of comments just floods in, and they all had one main goal in mind: emotional validation. This one simple phrase, or something like it, just kept popping up over and over again. It's kind of like the digital version of putting a hand on someone's shoulder. And what's really key here is that before anyone even thought about giving advice, their first instinct was to make sure she didn't blame herself. That validation, it had to come first, no question. And the support didn't stop there. It went even deeper. People in the comments weren't just saying it's not your fault. They were actively trying to build her back up. They praised her for her courage. And in doing that, they started to change the narrative. They framed her not as a victim, but as this incredibly brave and resilient survivor. Okay, so once that foundation of emotional support was set, you could literally see the conversation pivot. The whole community's focus shifted from feelings to actions. It became all about the immediate, practical steps she needed to take to be safe, both physically and emotionally. And what's amazing is how quickly a clear, actionable plan just emerged from all those comments. Number one, do not go to school tomorrow. Number two, find a trusted adult at school, a counselor, a teacher, and tell them. Three, look into getting a protective or restraining order. Four, and this one was repeated a lot, do not respond to him or his family. And finally, number five, lean on that real-world support system she already had. See, this wasn't just a bunch of random advice. It was a concrete plan that the community literally built together. But it didn't just stop with the immediate stuff. The community was also thinking long-term. They started addressing the really complex challenges ahead: the legal stuff, dealing with the school, and of course, the emotional journey of healing. And what's really interesting is that people started bringing up and explaining concepts like PTSD. They actually defined it, as this condition where it's incredibly hard to recover after a terrifying event. And they specifically pointed out how a memory can cause real distress, even when there's no actual danger around. This was huge because it added this crucial educational piece to the puzzle, helping everyone understand the potential long-term psychological impact. So all this long-term advice kind of sorted itself into two main buckets. First, you have the legal and institutional stuff: press charges, give evidence to the police, tell the school administration. And then you have the personal and emotional side, where the message was super clear: get professional therapy, learn about what healthy boundaries look like, and keep leaning on that amazing best friend. It's basically a complete blueprint for healing, all crowdsourced in real time. Pretty incredible. Okay, so what's the big takeaway here? Let's zoom out for a second and just look at the bigger picture. What we've just witnessed is the spontaneous creation of a support community, right in the middle of a crisis. And that right there is really the heart of this whole thing. It started with one person's cry for help, and it was answered by this huge group of anonymous strangers. And look, they didn't just offer sympathy, they did so much more. They built a complete roadmap for her, covering everything from that initial emotional validation to immediate safety, all the way through to long-term healing. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating And honestly, a complex question. In this world where we're all so connected, where you can reach thousands of people in a split second, where does our responsibility to support each other actually begin? And where does it end? It's definitely something to think about.